Okay, so I realize how confusing it might be to bring in an Illustrator file into Photoshop to color. So I'm going to take you through the steps on how to do that. So let's say this is my Illustrator file, my vector file that I just created. So the first thing I want to do, so as you can see, there's a vector file and it has all my layers. So these layers don't actually matter when you bring it into Photoshop because you're just coloring. You're not doing anything else. So one thing that you're going to do, right now I just have my layers and there's no background. I turned off that background so there shouldn't be. Actually, I'm going to delete that. It might not even work. So right now it's just my layers. Although it looks like I have a background, that is just the canvas that it's showing me on Illustrator. Technically it's just these vector images or vector shapes that you will only see in the end when I save it. So I'm going to save this. Desktop, Adobe PDF, save. What I have on my desktop is this file right here. And again, if you open it up, it looks like it's 8.5 by 11, but it is not because there is no background. And to show you that, I'm going to bring it into Photoshop. It's going to ask me what pages I want to open. I only have one page on here, so that's the only one that is selected. And it's going to tell me the size of it. It's 7.8 by 4.8, and it's supposedly it's supposed to, it looks like 8.5 by 11 like shown here, but it's actually not because there's no background. What does that mean? So when I click OK, as you can see, there's no background. It's only the black lines and then some of that white and gray in there. But in my Illustrator file, it's just all these vector shapes brought together. There is no background, so there's nothing back here. That's just a placeholder in Illustrator as it shows you here in Photoshop. There is no background. So you probably won't encounter this, but if you do, that's why it looks like that. Now, what are you going to encounter? You'll probably encounter something that looks more like this. So I'm going to add a layer. I'm going to put a background, just a plain white background. Oops. Now, as you can see, my background's right there. You can see the backgrounds here, and then the top one, the top layer has all the vector files. So now I'm going to save it again. I'm going to say number 2, PDF, save, save. So now here's my first one. Here's the second one. This one actually does have a background. It looks exactly like the first one, but how do you see that it does have a background? Well, when you bring it into Photoshop. Again, it's going to only ask me or what pages I want. Now you can see the width and the height. Hit OK. Now there is a background, but it's one file because when you bring in an Illustrator file into Photoshop, it just brings it in as one flat file. There is no multiple layers. That's why I said the layers do not matter in Illustrator. Now what do? You have this one flat file. First thing you do is add a layer. Make sure that layer, which is right here, is underneath. Now select that file, your Illustrator file. Make sure that's selected. Right here it's highlighted. You're going to go here, click that arrow, and then hit multiply. What multiply does is it makes the white transparent, but it leaves the black so you can still see it when you color. So now that this is multiplied, I would lock it so you don't mess with it and accidentally hit it. And then you will select that bottom layer. Now you can start coloring. You're going to color underneath. Opacity is low. Now you're going to color underneath. As you can see, it is underneath that image. Now what happens if you don't have the illustrated image as a multiply or as a multiplied file? Well, let me color this. Let's pretend I was trying to color the wall. Let's say you didn't hit multiply. This is what happens. I'm going to select that. I'm going to change it back to normal. It makes it into a normal file where you can't see anything underneath. Now if you had this above it, you can surely color it, but it's going to cover the lines, and that's not what you want. You can definitely make that the opacity, you can bring it down, but then it fades your color, so you don't want that either. Make sure your color is underneath. Select your Illustrator file, change it to multiply, and again lock it. So I colored the wall. Now I want to color his robe. I added a new layer for a different color. I'm going to change the color that I want to the color that I want, like this. Coloring his skin. His skin is colored. Now you see that it's in this layer, not on this one, although you could color put multiple colors on one layer. That's fine, but the only thing that's going to happen is it might, if you just want to go back and change one of the colors or erase one of the colors, you might have an issue having two colors on there. So that's why I suggest just putting each color on a different layer. So this one is on the blue layer. If you notice here, I'm coloring over the neck, but the neck, you can't see anything. Why is that? Because this layer, the skin layer color, is above that blue one. Now let's say I want to erase that blue and leave erase the blue. Well, what might happen is, oh no, I accidentally erased the red because they're on the same layer. So that's why you got to watch out for not having them on the same layer. Yes, you can have them on the same layer, but I would recommend you not to. And one other thing that I want to show you, let's say I want to color, I don't know, I'm going to color something out here green for some reason. You can see it's taking over some of those colors because it's right on top. It's a very top one. Well, you can mess with this by going through these and seeing the different effects. So I'm not clicking on them, I'm just kind of hovering over them. And it changes the effects of the color depending on which one of these you choose. So that screen, well, you can see what it does. They all do something different. And some of these you can kind of tell what they do if you just read it. You're like, oh, okay, it's just overlaying on top of it, so it's going to mix the colors. And I don't really know all the details to all these, but yeah, so you can see what they do by just hovering over this, and that's under this file right here. Let's see what it does to that bottom file. Doesn't really do anything with that bottom one because it's not on top of anything. Maybe the skin one, what would it do? Would it do something? No, because there's a color, that green is on top of it, so you can't see what it's actually doing. So it depends on where it's stacked, what it's on top. So if the skin was on top of that, then it would do something. So you can have some cool effects by messing with this as well. Okay, so let's say this is my final. I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna name it final. So I saved as Photoshop PDF on my desktop. I'm just gonna leave all those layers. Save PDF. Now I have my final right here. It's a PDF file. I have it opened up. Now this is I want to create my document. So I do have a video on creating documents, and I won't be able to show you on here because my trial is over for some reason. But what happens is with this Acrobat Reader, you hit organize, a control panel shows up right here. There's a little icon right here that says insert from file, I believe. You click on that, then it's going to bring up another little window asking you which files I want to insert into this one file. Well, I look for my other two here. Within that window that it opens up, double or click and then hit open, and then this one will have the other 3 pages. Right now it's 1, but if I insert those other PDF files, it's going to be 3 pages in this one document. I make sure that I save this file, and then when I close it out, it's going to have little black brackets like this, and then it's going to have the multiple pages. If you have like the other Acrobat Reader, like what I showed you earlier in class today, it's going to be under Edit, Insert, and then Insert from File. click on that second part, it's going to bring up a window, and then you choose your other PDF files. That's how you create a document made of PDF files, and that's what you will turn in as your final. Your first page will have thumbnails, sketches. Second one is going to be like your roughs. Third one might be your examples. Fourth one would be your final. So it can be 4 pages, it can be 5 pages, it can be 6 pages. There can be 6 pages in your document. Yep, that's it. If you have any questions, email me and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can.